Have you ever found yourself admiring a leader you know is corrupt? Have you ever asked yourself why people don't just tolerate corrupt leaders, they worship them? Why do crowds cheer for someone who openly lies, steals, exploits? Why do entire nations rally behind men who break rules with a grin and call them heroes? This isn't a political quirk. It's not just a third world issue. It's a dark mirror. What we see in those moments doesn't reflect the leader. It reflects us, our needs, our instincts, our fears, our secret admiration for those who do what we dare not. Because sometimes corruption isn't a flaw, it's the feature. And Friedrich Nietzsche saw it coming, long before the world knew names like Putin, Berlusconi, or Najib Razak. Nietzsche understood a terrifying truth. People don't just endure power, they crave it, especially when it wears the mask of strength and the stench of sin. Take Najib Razak, former Malaysian Prime Minister, accused of looting $4.5 billion from a public fund. The evidence was overwhelming, the damage undeniable, and yet millions still saw him as a national hero. Why? Because in their eyes, he wasn't a thief. He was a patriot, a man who did what needed to be done and stood up to the West. Mussolini, Italy's strongman. The crowds didn't whisper his name in shame, they sang it in the streets. Even as he dismantled democracy and centralized power. These aren't isolated cases. They're patterns, repeated across time, borders and ideologies. Leaders who don't hide their corruption, but flaunt it and are adored for it. So, here's the uncomfortable question. Why do we cheer for the very people who betray us? This isn't just historical trivia, it's happening now. Harvard and University of Chicago researchers looked into regions where politicians with criminal records consistently win elections. The result? A chilling discovery. 40% of voters knowingly supported corrupt candidates. Why? Because they said, sometimes you need someone who can break the rules and get things done. They weren't blind. They were choosing strength over ethics, action over integrity, power over morality. This video isn't about political theory. It's about you. It's about us. It's about the subtle, often subconscious choices we make, not just at the ballot box, but in relationships, in business, in the influencers we idolize. Have you ever found yourself drawn to someone, even though you knew they were morally compromised? If so, Nietzsche's about to explain why. The will to power. Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a cliff. The wind howls. The ground crumbles beneath your feet. Below you, nothing but chaos. According to Nietzsche, that's not a nightmare, that's life. The universe offers no grand meaning, no divine order, just randomness, uncertainty, and fear. And yet, we survive, we build, we fight. Why? Nietzsche's answer was simple, the will to power. Nietzsche wrote, "My idea is that every specific body strives to become master over all space and to extend its force, its will to power. This isn't about domination over others. It's about dominion over existence, control, order. The desperate human need to impose meaning on the meaningless, and that's the core drive that corrupt leaders hijack, because when people feel powerless, economically broken, culturally sidelined, personally lost, they seek someone who seems to have mastered chaos. Someone who owns the cliff they're dangling from. They don't care about virtue, they care about survival. And if someone radiates certainty in a storm, they follow." Modern example and psychology. Look at political rallies today. The chants, the worship, the ritualistic energy. It's not ignorance, It's identification. These followers see their leader's power as their own. Psychologist Jennifer Whitson studied this exact phenomenon. In a 2008 experiment, participants who were deprived of control became 40% more likely to see patterns that weren't real and to believe in conspiracy theories. They wanted to believe. They needed to believe. And the more uncertain the world gets, the more we reach for those who offer simple answers, even if those answers are wrong, even if they're corrupt. So ask yourself, when was the last time you admired someone who got results, even if their methods made you uneasy? That tiny contradiction. That's not just a glitch. It's a glimpse into something far deeper and far darker. Master morality versus slave morality. Friedrich Nietzsche didn't just talk about morality, he cracked it open like a skull and stared inside. He saw that our moral instincts aren't universal. They're born from power dynamics, not from some divine truth. In his eyes, there were two types of morality, and most people don't even realize which one they're living by. What is good? All that heightens the feeling of power, the will to power, power itself in man. The Antichrist. This is master morality, the morality of rulers, warriors, creators, those who define good by strength, dominance, and the ability to impose their vision on the world. And then there's slave morality, the morality of the weak, the oppressed, the voiceless. It calls suffering a virtue, humility a strength, and obedience a form of goodness. It's built on resentment of those who stand tall. Nietzsche wasn't praising either side blindly. He was exposing the hypocrisy of people who claim to follow one, but secretly admire the other. Modern tension. What we say versus what we do. We live in societies that preach equality, compassion, fairness, the language of slave morality. It's the morality you see in mission statements, in classroom posters, in campaign slogans. But what do we watch? What do we cheer for? Brutality, competition, power. We cancel celebrities during the day, then binge-watch Succession at night, reveling in backstabbing and ruthless ambition. We mourn the death of democracy, then vote for strongmen who promise to smash the system. This isn't just hypocrisy, it's a split soul. We tell pollsters we want kindness, but when we feel threatened, when the future looks unstable, we don't want kindness. We want a winner. Real-world proof. History is soaked in examples of people who followed power, not morality. Take Napoleon Bonaparte. The man waged wars across Europe. Millions died under his campaigns. But he wasn't just tolerated, he was worshipped. Why? Because he projected mastery, because he didn't follow moral rules. He bent them into shapes that served him. His admirers didn't say, "He's a good man despite his flaws." They said, "He's beyond good and evil. He's destiny." A 2019 study from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology confirmed this contradiction. People who claimed to value compassion and equality still rated dominant, power-seeking leaders as more charismatic, competent, and worthy of loyalty. What does that tell us? It tells us that deep down, we're not just moral creatures. We're animals with a hierarchy. And we feel safest when we're standing behind the biggest lion. So ask yourself, when someone breaks rules and gets away with it, do you feel anger or just a flicker of respect? Resentment, the poison within. Now we reach one of Nietzsche's most disturbing revelations, resentment. This isn't regular resentment, it's psychic rot. a slow dripping venom that forms when we feel powerless, unheard, insignificant, and we can't strike back. Man would rather will nothingness than not will at all. Wrote by Nietzsche, when people feel utterly powerless, they don't want justice. They want destruction, not solutions, scapegoats. They'd rather burn something down than live in a world where they don't matter. That's why corrupt leaders thrive in times of economic despair, cultural collapse, or rapid change. They don't need to offer policies. They just need to offer revenge. Case study: vengeance over justice. Imagine a rural town. The factory closed years ago. The kids are moving to the cities. No one's listening. Then a leader shows up, not with a plan, but with a target. He names the enemy, promises to strike back. And suddenly, that hollow feeling? It has direction. Even if he's corrupt, even if he lies, they feel seen. And that's a drug far stronger than integrity. Political scientist Catherine Kramer saw this in real time. In her field research across rural Wisconsin, people supported policies that hurt them economically just because those policies punished urban elites. The emotional payoff of seeing the enemy suffer was more important than their own financial security. Now, let's get painfully honest. Have you ever supported someone not because they helped you, but because they hurt someone you hate? That's resentment, and corrupt leaders feed on it like wolves. Dark clarity. Nietzsche never sugar-coated human nature. He didn't say these forces were evil. He said they were real. He warned us, if we don't face these instincts with clear eyes, we'll be manipulated by those who do. And once someone hijacks your resentment, they own you. Freedom is terrifying. Nietzsche once wrote, "Freedom is the will to be responsible for ourselves." Let that sink in. Not the freedom to vote or to speak or to move, but the freedom to own your life fully, your choices, your values, your consequences. Sounds noble, right? But Nietzsche saw the truth. Most people are terrified of that kind of freedom because true freedom doesn't come with instruction manuals. It demands that we build meaning from scratch, without leaning on religion, society, or the crowd. And that's exhausting. So what do most of us do? We surrender, we obey, we follow. Nietzsche laid out this psychological progression in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. He described 3 spiritual transformations: the camel, who carries burdens placed upon him by others; the lion, who rebels and says, "No more"; the child, who creates new values from nothing. The tragedy? Most people never get past the camel stage. They carry, they obey, they follow, because freedom isn't just risky, it's lonely. Escape from freedom. Psychologist Erich Fromm expanded on Nietzsche's insight in his book, Escape from Freedom. He said, moral anxiety, the fear of making the wrong choice when there's no clear right answer, drives people to authoritarianism. Think about it. You're faced with a complex ethical dilemma. No obvious answers. High stakes. What brings more comfort? Making the decision yourself and owning the fallout? Or having a leader say, "I'll decide, just follow me"? Most people will take the second option, not because they're weak, but because they're human, and that's when corrupt leaders slide in. Not with truth, but with certainty. They say things like, "Only I can fix this." The choice is simple. Don't overthink, just act. And suddenly, you're no longer free. You're obedient and relieved. Case study: Weimar Germany. Take Weimar-era Germany. Post-WWI chaos, inflation, humiliation. The people weren't just angry, They were confused, drowning in moral ambiguity, and so they reached for simplicity. A leader who promised order, who said, "You don't have to choose anymore. I will lead." The outcome? Catastrophic. But the psychological appeal? Undeniable. It's not that people supported corruption by mistake. They chose certainty over truth, obedience over chaos, myth over complexity. So ask yourself, when was the last time you deferred a hard moral decision to someone else and felt relieved? That relief, that peace, is exactly what corrupt power sells you, and we keep buying it. Herd instinct and the fear of exile. Nietzsche didn't believe in original sin, but he did believe in something just as damning. Nietzsche wrote, "The surest way to corrupt a youth is to teach him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently." Humans are social creatures, tribal by nature. In the wild, exile meant death. So conformity wasn't weakness, it was survival. That instinct never left us. Today, we don't fear lions or frostbite. We fear something more subtle, social death. Being unfollowed, being disliked, being alone. So when a corrupt leader presents himself as the voice of the group, we follow, even if our conscience disagrees. Modern example: whistleblowers. Consider the Enron scandal. Accountant Sharon Watkins discovered accounting fraud and tried to warn her superiors. Was she applauded? No, she was marginalized, threatened, almost silenced, despite being right. Because the herd doesn't reward truth. It rewards unity. And the moment you break from the pack, you're a threat. Corrupt leaders know this. That's why they frame every criticism as an attack on the group. It's not, "He lied." It's, "They're trying to destroy us." It's not, "She stole." It's, "They hate our way of life." This manipulation makes dissent feel like betrayal, and loyalty feel like virtue, even when it's blind. Psychology of tribal defense. Social psychologist Jonathan Haidt observed this exact dynamic. When people's sacred values are threatened, they stop thinking like scientists, curious, open, logical. They become theologians, defending belief systems no matter the evidence. Even smart, educated individuals will ignore facts if those facts threaten the group's identity. Have you ever bitten your tongue? Not because you were wrong, but because telling the truth would have made you an outcast. That moment of silence is how corruption grows roots. God is dead, and the birth of mythic leadership. Nietzsche's most infamous line still echoes like a thunderclap. God is dead, from his book The Gay Science. But he wasn't mocking religion. He wasn't celebrating atheism. He was diagnosing a spiritual vacuum. In a world where traditional gods had lost their power, Nietzsche asked, "Who now gives us meaning? Who gives us values?" And the terrifying answer is this: we still worship, just in different forms. We kneel before billionaires. We chant for politicians. We mythologize tech founders. We deify influencers. We didn't kill the instinct to worship. We just gave it new targets. Modern hero worship. Think of the language we use to describe leaders we admire. She's playing 4D chess. He sees around corners. They're 10 steps ahead of everyone else. That's not admiration. That's myth-making. We don't just call them competent, we call them superhuman. And once someone is mythologized, their flaws become sacred. Their lies are strategy. Their greed is vision. Their ruthlessness, a necessity. Case study: Putin's cult of power. Look at Vladimir Putin. Despite well-documented corruption, staggering personal wealth, and authoritarian tactics, many Russians still see him not as a thief, but as a savior. His palaces and power aren't embarrassing. They're framed as symbols of national resurgence, strength, pride. Because when people tie their identity to a leader, defending him becomes defending themselves. Psychologist Dan McAdams found something remarkable. When followers deeply connect with a controversial leader, they fuse their personal identity to his narrative. So abandoning him doesn't feel like political change. It feels like self-betrayal. Do you have heroes whose flaws you automatically excuse? If so, ask yourself, are you admiring the person or protecting the story you've built around them? Because corrupt leaders don't need to be perfect. They just need to become sacred. Übermensch versus last man. Nietzsche offered two archetypes to explain our relationship with power: the Übermensch, the one who creates their own values, who confronts life's pain and chaos without flinching and rises through it, and the last man, who seeks nothing but comfort, safety, and the absence of suffering. The last man doesn't want meaning, he wants distractions. He doesn't chase truth, he avoids discomfort. One still loves one's neighbor and rubs against him, for one needs warmth. Thus spoke Zarathustra. We often assume we are evolving toward greatness, but Nietzsche warned we may just be slipping into sedation. And the more we fear discomfort, the more we welcome corrupt leaders who promise to take decisions away from us in exchange for ease. Real-world analogy: FIFA scandal. Remember the FIFA corruption scandal: bribes, embezzlement, fraud. And yet millions of football fans looked the other way. Why? Because FIFA gave them what they craved: excitement, identity, escape. The tournaments ran, the flags waved, and the corruption, it was tolerated, even justified, because the games continued. Corruption, when wrapped in spectacle, is no longer a sin. It becomes a subscription. Simplicity versus complexity. Imagine two political speeches. The world is complex. The path forward will require sacrifice and uncertainty. The solution is simple. I alone can fix it. No sacrifice needed. Which one wins elections? We know the answer. Studies across countries and decades show the same trend. In times of stress, voters gravitate towards simple messages and confident leaders, even if they know those leaders are lying. Why? Because uncertainty is painful, complexity is exhausting, and power, even corrupt power, is comforting. So ask yourself, do you want truth or do you want relief? Because corrupt leaders don't just manipulate, they medicate. They offer us freedom from freedom, and far too often we take it. Resistance is possible. This entire journey through Nietzsche's darkest insights might leave you feeling bleak, but here's the twist Nietzsche never gets enough credit for. He didn't just diagnose human weakness, he believed in transformation. Because even if corruption is a symptom of our deepest instincts, we are not doomed to obey them. Case study: South Africa and Mandela. Take post-apartheid South Africa. After decades of brutal racial oppression, the perfect soil existed for resentment, revenge, and corrupt retaliation. But Nelson Mandela did something almost no Nietzschean analyst would have predicted. He led with reconciliation. Instead of channeling resentment, he acknowledged pain and channeled it into healing. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission wasn't naive, it was strategic. It neutralized the psychological fuel corrupt leaders often burn. It gave people voice without needing blood. Case study: Iceland's kitchenware revolution. Or take Iceland after the 2008 financial collapse. While other countries bailed out bankers and protected elites, Iceland's people revolted, not with violence, but with frying pans. They surrounded parliament, banging kitchen tools in protest. They forced resignations, jailed corrupt executives, and rewrote their constitution with ordinary citizens at the helm. This was collective will to power, not domination, but ownership. They didn't fall for strongmen, they became strong together. Case study: Liberia's women. In Liberia, women across tribal lines came together after years of civil war and corruption. They created cross-tribal accountability councils and refused to be divided by those in power. They stripped corrupt leaders of their favorite weapon, tribal identity. And they did it with structure, deliberation, and the most Nietzschean power of all, self-awareness. These people weren't saints. They weren't immune to rage, fear, or tribalism. They simply built systems that understood their instincts and redirected them. That's what real resistance looks like. The individual's role. So, what about you? It's easy to talk about countries, harder to talk about ourselves. But the seed of every corrupt regime starts with one silent compromise. He's bad, but he's ours. She lies, but she wins. It's not right, but it feels good. That's the voice inside you that Nietzsche wanted you to confront, because power isn't just what others hold over us, it's what we willingly surrender, for comfort, for identity, for vengeance. Final message. Our communities reflect us. Look at your own community. Does it reinforce the cult of strength? Does it reward obedience over honesty? Does it punish dissent more than it punishes corruption? Or does it hold power accountable, celebrate integrity, create space for moral courage? Nietzsche believed that man is something to be overcome, not destroyed, but transformed. And that transformation doesn't begin with others. It begins with the only leader you can never escape, yourself. Nietzsche's last challenge. Become who you are, Nietzsche. That's the final command. Not to mimic others, not to follow blindly, but to create. From your instincts, your struggles, your shadows, something new. To face your will to power, to recognize your resentment, to accept your fear of freedom, to confront your herd instinct, to challenge your craving for idols, to reject the warm death offered by the last man, and to love it all. Nietzsche called it amor fati, the love of one's fate. To love not just your triumphs, but your tragedies, not just your victories, but your contradictions. Because only then, do you become someone that no corrupt leader can own. Now ask yourself, why do you support the leaders you support? Is it rational or emotional? Do they serve justice, or simply your desire for simplicity, vengeance, or belonging? These aren't comfortable questions. They're threatening. They shatter self-image. But Nietzsche believed in confronting illusions, even the ones we build about ourselves. That's how we evolve. Man is something that shall be overcome. And maybe, just maybe, understanding why we worship the corrupt is the first step in that overcoming. If this sparked something in you, don't let it fade. Share this with someone who thinks, someone who questions, someone who's ready to confront hard truths, not just about society, but about themselves. And before you go, tell me in the comments, which of these psychological forces, resentment, fear of freedom, herd instinct, do you see most clearly in yourself or in the world around you? Let's not just understand the world. Let's change how we live in it. Because the most dangerous power we can ever give any leader is the power to remain unquestioned.